We purchased this asset for $800,000 and we're budgeted for $800,000 of NOI this year out of that property. So think about that. We bought it for $800,000 and our NOI budget is $800,000.
Now, was it
right? And
was
so
it
that's
previously a hostel, or did you
it
convert
was
it?
it was previously a hostel. Here's one of the main reasons why. Everybody's like, "Wow, like what? How is that even possible?" There is this unique nature where with hostels, because they have shared kitchens and shared bathrooms, they don't quite fit for others. So we're able to go in where there's very little competition. It's not valued on the purchase side the same way of purchasing a hotel.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt for Incredible. This episode is going to be absolute fire. We've got my man Nathan St Cyr. Nathan and I have been good friends for about a year or so. He owns $30 million worth of assets. He and his partner, Michael, who's also a blast. He's not able to join us right now, but he's a fantastic time that we have to have him on sometime. They own 2 hostels with 140 beds across the both of them. And they achieved the number 1 hostel status within 3 years from Hostel World. For anybody who doesn't know, so I spent some time, we brought it up on this podcast before, backpacking Europe quite a bit right after college. And Hostel World is the group to get any sort of recognition from. They're absolutely like the pillars in the space. And so getting #1 hostel within 3 years is absolutely insane. I know the competition is incredibly fierce. Their goal is to get to 400 beds. And I think I don't see it on here, but I've heard you mention it, $400 million worth of assets. And this episode's going to be a ton of fun. Nathan's going to drop a lot of knowledge. I've been fortunate enough to be on a lot of calls with him with different team building events and coaching people in real estate. And so the guy drops nothing but fire. His background is in sales and skill development and leadership. So we're going to dive into how do you create teams? How do you lead? How do you identify people to bring in on your team so you can execute without obsessing over the how yourself, so you can actually scale and do bigger things and accomplish incredible things in compressed periods of time? Nathan, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'm freaking pumped. Let's go, Gideon.
Let's fucking go, bro. So to dive right in, tell us about, well, first of all, describe to people what a hostel is and what differentiates it from other asset classes.
Yeah, so I think the big differentiator is that you have a by the bed model versus by the room. That's the biggest differentiator from a structural standpoint. There still are rooms that are very similar to a hotel, where they have private rooms as well, but there's also rooms that are shared accommodations. The second biggest differentiator is typically if you're going to stay at a hotel, you're going to stay at a hotel because you probably want privacy. Where the hostel community is really looking to really have a community-centric experience, where they're experiencing the place that they're traveling with other like-minded people, where they may come as strangers, but ultimately their goal is to leave as friends. So a hostel, the whole goal behind the hostel is to create a space that really elicits that community, that togetherness, where people experience that region, but they do it instead of alone, they do it together.
And it's worth noting too, it might have crossed listeners' minds, but hostels are so incredibly challenging because of how experientially focused they are. So with boutique hotels, you can add value through cool amenity, cool landscape, cool vibe. But at the end of the day, it tends to be, unless it's like elevated luxury class, it tends to be the asset itself that delivers the value. With hostels, it's a totally different model where you do have to deliver on the asset itself. It needs to be a clean environment. People need to feel safe, especially young female travelers who are traveling alone. So I understand y'all have an offering where it's like there's female only dorms to support that environment. But beyond that, it's the experience that people are going there for. So there's an entire layer added of complexity and value add so that people get excited about being there. Nathan, how do you think about those experiences, and what experiences have you found drive the most engagement and excitement to get people to stay with you?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's just address the elephant in the room, and that's that a lot of people, when they hear hostel, they go, ooh. There's a stigma that may be attached in the US that internationally has really moved forward from. But in the US, there's a stigma of, okay, a hostel is a dirty place that is the cheapest way that you could possibly go and travel somewhere. And, I think that's one of the reasons that we've been so successful. And within that first 3 years, our lack of experience in the hostel industry has really driven our rise. And what I mean by that is, we really looked at the space and the assets as an opportunity to bring in that boutique hotel asset real feel from what you described as, okay, you have the asset itself, where we're designed forward and we're creating a space that we were proud of. We started developing to our standards versus what maybe a typical hostel standard would be. So I just want to address, first of all, that stigma that people will actually come and spend more money than they would potentially at an economy based maybe studio through Airbnb. They'll come together and they'll spend more money in our hostel because of the experience and because we are driving ADR and occupancy through the experiences. But you ask, like, well, what type of experiences do you focus on to really, elicit that community feeling? Well, first of all, we have a 15-person passenger van where we're out there and we're like, okay, what are the highlights of the region that we're in? Well, we're pretty fortunate that we have 2 properties here in the Hawaiian Islands, and it's not difficult to develop activities like chasing waterfalls, where we go from waterfall to waterfall to waterfall. We take the guests there. They get up in the morning and they head on out and they go from one experience that's awe-inspiring to the next, but they're doing it together. And, as you know, when you start to do things together, it creates this organic feeling. So then by the time they get back to the hostel after a day of chasing waterfalls or snorkeling or doing, jungle hikes or whatever it is, by the time they get back to the hostel, we have this unbelievable community space with lounges and pool tables and, stages for karaoke and so it just takes that momentum of, hey, we started the day together, maybe we didn't know each other, we were a little bit shy, but then through the day we all did this together, and by the end it's like everybody is one big family. So I think the whole concept, from what we do from an activity standpoint through what we do on site, really elicits that. The second thing that's really important is we're a full staff model. So human interaction for us is absolutely critical. Whether it's 24-hour reception, whether it's every one of these activities has a tour guide, any on-site experience that we provide, it always has somebody that's guiding and facilitating the experience, and really recognizing that sometimes uh, our human tendencies may be to retreat. So if we just give people that little bit of soft nudge to pull people together, their experience gets amplified. So we always have guides that are helping bring people together.
How do you support and select those guides? Like, are they salaried employees that you've selected? Are they travelers that are getting a free night stay and they're staying there for an extended period of time? What does that setup look like?
Yeah, so it's really made up of both. When we look at our larger day activities, those have been made through our full-time employees, where we hire them based on their passion for travel and people, right? So the starting point is, the people. But then secondly, we have a bench of what you described as what would be a work exchange or a volunteer. And typically on some of our shorter activities, with our longer stay volunteers, once they develop a work ethic and they show that from a personality standpoint, they can represent the brand well, then we'll lead them into the opportunity to lead some of these maybe shorter trips.
I love that. I love the concept of selecting someone based on their interests rather than their experience. I'm working with a new content creator or a content editor for my stuff, and I interviewed a handful of people, and one of the people that I interviewed, she was fantastic, super nice, had experience doing exactly what I was looking for with the previous person, but she didn't create any content outside of her work. And I ended up opting for the person who they didn't have experience working for anybody, but they created a lot of content themselves and they were genuinely interested and obsessed with it. And how is the space changing from a personal perspective? And so I ended up going with the person who had that interest, and we've just started working together. And it's, I mean, that interest and intrigue and genuine curiosity in what's going on is what I'm betting on, and what I've already seen compared to previous editors that I've worked with. That seems to be that spark that I'm really, really excited about. So I love hearing this idea of, like, it's not what you've done, it's what drives you that's actually going to get us in this company across the finish line.
Well, and I love that you said that, because when we really look at our operational side, so the running of, we're budgeted to see, nearly $3 million of revenue between our two Hawaii hostels this year. And when we look at that, our top operation, so our area general manager, we went through the interview process over 3 years ago when we started to open our first, when we were going to open our first hostel. And when we had a consultant, we were going through the process, and the consultant set up all the interviews. So he created a spreadsheet for us, and it had each person, and then we would say yes or no. He would advise yes or no, and we broke it down, and we got to the point where we were in our final interviews, right? So we were at our final 3 interviews. One of the names of the final interview was Zach, and Zach was this guy that had been loved passion for hostels, but he was really buttoned up. He like had all of his calls from his office, and he was currently working for like FedEx or UPS or something like that. So when we'd have these interviews with him, he was in this office with literally a buttoned up shirt and a collar, and so we're getting ready to have this. He's one of the final 3, and we go and we have our final interview. The video comes on, and here's this guy with, not bald, with a buttoned up shirt, but outside with a fence, pine trees, big hoop earrings, tattoos. And he's like, hey, and we're like, we've never seen this guy before. Like, the opposite of what we were interviewing from. And we're like, what the heck is going on? And it's the board of 3 of us. It's Mike, myself, and our consultant. And they were so caught off guard that they're like, what is going on? The consultant dropped off. He just was like, boom. And then I started asking a couple questions. I'm like, hey, what's happening? And he said, and it said Zach Craner. And I said, Zach, where are you? Where are you located? And he said, in Oregon. And I remembered from the initial interview or the initial sheet of candidates, there was this guy that said, this is my dream job. And his name was Zach. And he created this long thing about his passion. Well, we said no, he had no experience, right? We're like, you're not going to be the general manager of our hostel. We don't have experience either. So we said no. Well, anyway, the consultant sent the invitation to the wrong Zach. And that's what we ended up calling him. Well, Mike and the consultant dropped off the call. I went forward with the interview, and I said, look, man, I love your energy. And we didn't have this call because you're the best candidate to take over as our general manager, but we're really looking to build this special company on human capital. And we'd love to just invite you out for 30 days. And so here this kid comes out for 30 days in exchange for a bed. I said, we want to develop these really cool activities. And so he became our activity creator in the very beginning of our hostel. He was our second hire. After 30 days, we're like, we got to hire this dude, right? And then when we had the next full-time position, he got the full-time position. When we had an assistant manager, now we're growing. We're like, oh, this thing's working. He got the assistant manager position. Then the general manager had to leave and go back to the mainland. And we're like, he doesn't have the experience for this, but he just kept stepping up, right? He was that human capital that, although he didn't have the experience, he had everything else. He had the intangibles, the dependability, the loyal, the culture, the team building, all of the things, and was open to coaching and growth. And ultimately, he became our area general manager and oversees everything that we do here in Hawaii. So we always tease him and we say the wrong Zach became the right Zach.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
But yeah,
amazing.
really, it does epitomize, though, what you were talking about. It also epitomizes the culture that we create, that we really want to be able to look at human capital. What are people's strengths? How can we put them in the right seat in the bus so that they succeed? How can we take what they love doing, their passion? Zach's is team building, and he just is so dependable, and he flies the Hostels flag. He represents us so well. So all of that marriage has happened over time, but we really believe in building people.
That's amazing. We're building a company on human capital. I absolutely love that. Because at the end of the day, I always say this, everything starts and ends with people. Everything is for people, by people. And so if you're not thinking about the people in the middle and you're just thinking of dollars or efficiency and you're trying to squeeze everything out and you lose that humanity, then in many industries and especially hospitality, you lose that touch that people are actually there for.
Yeah, Gideon, I believe without question that human capital is the most valuable asset, and that we
100%.
should invest in human capital wholeheartedly and relentlessly. Because no matter where you are in the organization, if you take that to heart, if you're like, okay, I recognize that it's people that matter the most, that when we manage upwards, when we manage downwards, when we manage straight across to our peers, that if we have that as our culture, as like, okay, the most important thing is the person first, then ultimately people don't work for companies. People work for people. So what we're building is we're building this interconnected organization where we're all aligned in our ability to move forward and amplify.
Hey, quick pause here. If you're getting value from these conversations, we have a free newsletter where we'll share insights and we'll invite you to virtual events where we'll walk you through exactly how you can buy your first hotel. And it's all completely free. Just send us an email at hello@thehuntforincredible.com with newsletter in the subject line. That's hello@thehuntforincredible.com with newsletter in the subject line. Now back to the show.
You guys became the number one hostel within 3 years. What did you dial in on that other hostels didn't?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, when we took this on, it was not because we were, just were thinking about, well, we want to open a hostel. Our goal, we saw that there was within the US market that it was emerging. And what I mean by that is if you look at the global hostel world, there's the US has the most hostels or the US has the most hotels out of any country in the world, right? Without question. But yet hostels in the US, we don't even crack the top 15. And so when we were looking at, we're like, well, why is this? Why is it that US really is so far behind what the global market has done? And as we dug in, we're like, gosh, man, if we look at the generations, the older generations, well, they had this stigma towards hostels. And so we thought, you know what? If you look at Gen Z, who really is the avatar of who our guest really is, the 30 and under, they've grown up in the US in a very different world. They've grown up in this shared basis, right? Whether it was they grew up with Uber. Well, I remember me when Uber came out, I'm like, I'm not freaking getting in some dude's car. Like, what? This is his own personal car? I ain't doing that. But look, we as Westerners in the US, we built everything around privacy. Well, Generation Z doesn't operate that way. They've grown up in this shared world. They've grown up with 40% of Generation Z has at some point done some sort of co-living, right? So when we were looking at this, we're like, man, the US is so far behind in this aspect of hospitality that there's got to be opportunity. So we recognize that, hey, let's go be early adopters and not just the US needs a hostel brand, not just another hostel. It needs a hostel brand. And that's really where the vision was built. And then we decided, let's build that prototype here on Maui. And let's build the prototype not from what hostels are, but from our own personal standard. And that became the differentiator. Look, we looked at some of the big boys in Europe and what they were doing, design forward, creating these experiences. So it's not like we recreated the wheel, but what we did is we really went out and took the best of the best. And we said, let's make that our standard versus, hey, let's build this as a hostel. So we just took a different approach to it. The second thing we did is we weren't coming at this because we were passionate hostel goers that wanted to, make hostel ownership our life. We really looked at this from the business side. So we're like, okay, so how can we build this where we're also doing it from an opportunity to scale, to make ourselves money, to make investors money? How can we create a win-win? Because there's this market that is ripe for growth in the US.
That's amazing. So share a
Yeah.
bit about the numbers. So you have $30 million worth of assets, number one hostel. What do the numbers for your two hostels look like?
Yeah, so this year we're budgeted to do in the two Hawaii hostels. We're currently growing, and we've got some growth here on the horizon we can't talk a lot about. But if we look at just the Hawaii hostels, we're budgeted for $2.5 million of gross revenue.
Nice. And then what's the expense ratio on a hostel?
Well, if we look at Maui, our prototype that we're really looking to, that's the one that we're like, okay, we've identified all of the things that now, if we could duplicate with an amount of volume of travelers in a region, and Maui's the one, right? That's the one where we're like, okay, if we duplicate this, 40% NOI, so 60-40.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's interesting because I imagine you end up spending more to add value to the experiences, but then you reduce costs from the efficiencies of fitting multiple people in a room, right? So it probably balances itself out pretty well.
Okay, well, but there's also this, look, anytime you're looking to really force appreciation and equity growth, right? Anytime you're looking for that, it happens on the purchase side. So there's this really unique opportunity with hostels where we can go and look at what we purchased for. We purchased this asset for $800,000, and we're budgeted for $800,000 of NOI this year out of that property. So think about that. We bought it for $800,000, and our NOI budget is $800,000.
Now, was it
Right. And so that's
previously a hostel, or did you convert it?
It was previously a hostel. And so, and here's one of the main reasons why, right? Everybody's like, wow, like, what? Like, how is that even possible? Yes, look, we were able to take advantage of an opportunity during COVID, and we acted when other people were frozen, and that obviously, really helped us. But at the same time, there is this unique nature where with hostels, because they have shared kitchens and shared bathrooms, they don't quite fit for others. If somebody wants to go and take what was a hostel or one of these hospitality assets that has, shared restrooms and convert it from that to a boutique hotel, they're going to have to put restrooms in every single room. The infrastructure cost to convert is massive, right? Or if you take some of these economy-based properties like this, and you're like, okay, well, I want to turn this into a multifamily property. It's the same thing. Now you're going to have the infrastructure of putting in bathrooms and kitchens is the most expensive part. However, with hostels, you have this unique shared accommodation, shared bathrooms, shared kitchens that's a part of the actual business model. So we're able to go in where there's very little competition. That's the key, right? You don't have the same, it's not valued on the purchase side the same way that it's valued when you're looking at the competition of purchasing a hotel. But yet, when you break down an economy-based hotel, and then you look at the hostel model, what we do to a room, let's just use simple math. If you have a $100 economy-based room, but you go put 4 beds in there with $50 a piece, now you just increased that ADR to $200. In the snap of a fingers, just by configuration and model, you've doubled the ADR of that room.
Yeah.
Now, that's you're only able to put 4 beds. But some properties will find a room might be a $175 room, but now it converts to an 8 bed female only dorm. And now we're starting to go, okay, it's not $50 a bed, it's 65. And now we're able to get 8 in. And you're like, whoa, we just turned a $175 room into a, $500 room. So by understanding how to create safety, security, cleanliness experiences where we drive occupancy and ADR, then through room configuration, it's like an amplifier. Remember, money's made on the purchase. And because we're not in competition with all of the people that are out there hunting for boutique hotels and multifamily assets, we're this unique little space. And so it really, our buy side ends up being really, really solid. And then we amplify NOI by room configuration and the experience that we create.
That's awesome. Is there also a lot of opportunity for converting property types? Because when I was looking at hotels in the San Diego area last year, I came across a property that had an insane view, but it was currently an office space that wasn't being leased. It was vacant, but it was zoned to where it was it could be a flex spot and converted into a hotel. And I was running the numbers and I was like, this does not make sense to convert financially, the cost of converting into a hotel. But dude, this would make a perfect hostel because like you were saying, I think it was something like 4-to-1, like 4 rooms to 1 bathroom ratio across the property. I want to say there were like 26 rooms that were pretty sizable offices. You could probably fit, you know, a few bunk beds in each one, and it had a kitchen space. Do you ever see opportunities like that to convert because it's priced as an office, which is doing terribly in the States right now? It's making a slow comeback, and then converting
Yeah,
that to a hostel.
we believe it's maybe our number one opportunity.
Mm,
You're exactly right, Gideon. The one side of that, um, from where we're at in our actual growth stage, is that we look at, okay, if you want to minimize risk from an investor standpoint, because look, we've bootstrapped everything to this point. Everything that we own, our $30 million worth of assets, is owned 100% by Mike and I.
that's
but as
amazing.
we go but as we go and grow, now we bring in investor capital, right? And so anytime you enter in one of those situations where you're changing use from office into, you can get that entitlement done, but there is more risk involved, number one. Number two, the time to do it, it also stretches out the time period to take and go through that entitlement process, that change of use process. So although there's opportunity there in our stage right now, the thing that we look for first is it currently being operated as hospitality? That's really our number one. From a zoning standpoint, is it zoned correctly? Is it the existing use hospitality? Because then we take away that risk factor, and we take away the time factor. So, in our next property, that's what we're looking for. But for the big picture and the long run, Gideon, you're exactly right. This is an area that we're diving all in on.
That's awesome. So you're now gearing up to start raising capital to accelerate your acquisitions. What is a typical return profile that you're looking for investors when you're evaluating these deals?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be somewhat similar to probably what a boutique hotel may be, but we feel like our low end is going to be a boutique hotel high end. So we're looking for 20% plus IRRs. We're looking for 10% plus cash on cash returns with, an 8% preferred return, and a 2.5 to 3 multiplier over 7 years. When we look at what our profile to start is, that's where our starting point is. But usually it's where that's kind of the aggressive side. If you're looking at underwriting a hotel, where we're looking at that as, okay, let's make this our minimum must, but then with the opportunity to really knock it out of the park. If we use our prototype as an example, that would absolutely crush those numbers. Like, crush those numbers.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So you mentioned the prototype and how you're trying to replicate that. What are some characteristics? I know you mentioned
Yeah.
like experiences. What's the checklist that or the buy box, but more so like on the prototype, what it needs to be successful?
Volume of travelers, number one, right? The one thing, if you have let's say you have a 12 room hotel, right? A boutique hotel. Well, to have 80% occupancy of those 12 rooms, you really only need 9 of those rooms filled, 10 of those rooms filled, whatever, 9.5. And that might be done by 14 people. You might have an 80% occupancy with 14 people staying there. But if you're going to go and have 200 beds, well, let's use that same 12 room. Our Hilo property, we have 11 rooms and we can fit 72 people, right? Well, to fill 80% occupancy of 72 people, right? Now you need 50, whatever it is, 56. Now you need
Yeah.
56 people staying there, right? And so what we've recognized is volume of traveler for the hostel, the larger we get, is really, really, really critical. And for us to have the full staff model, right? We look at $1.2 million of revenue as our minimum gross revenue that we need to run our business model. So that has to be fueled by enough volume of travelers where it makes sense. So that's key. Secondly, a place that has international demand. Over 50% of our hostel guests are international. It's also where we do a ton of work exchange, right? It's the hostel industry is much more popular in right now in the global market than in the US market. So being able to identify markets that have a high number of travelers, that has international demand, those are two really key pieces to the equation.
Is nature a big component for you guys, or it is separate since there might be a vivacious nightlife or something in a city that you're willing to work in?
Yeah, I would say that number one, urban centers with transportation are first of all key. Obviously, urban centers like San Diego or Los Angeles or Seattle, like those urban centers, Boston, Washington, D.C., they have these. There's a reason that people go there to explore, right? You go to San Diego, and San Diego is loaded with things to do, both within the city and from a natural standpoint, right? From beaches. And again, that's what our business model really focuses on, is taking people out into these situations as expert guides and creating an unbelievable experience. So whether it's urban or whether the urban location focuses on some sort of natural beauty, those are obviously two keys.
So speaking of San Diego, you have some exciting things going on over there that we can't dive too deeply into, but tying into the leadership component and how you build teams, how are you thinking of planting a spot in that area or in a market like it from Hawaii?
Yeah. So what we learned so obviously our prototype was developed here on Maui. But when we went and added a property on another island, we learned very quickly that to go there, you still need to get on an airplane. Like, yes, it's just an island, so it's an hour away, but you actually really have to fly to Oahu and then fly over to Hilo. So it's a couple hours of travel. And we're like, what's the difference? Like, we just did a full renovation. We just put a full team in place. Like, what's the difference between opening on another island and opening on the West Coast or opening on the East? It's just the difference of a plane flight. In fact, we made a very strategic purchase recently of the building next to us on Maui that we're going to operate as. It accomplishes two things for us. The first thing it accomplishes is long-term housing for our long-term employees and our part-time employees. So we're able to really utilize the hostel and maximize revenue. And have a competitive market advantage where in these high demand locations, housing is such a difficult thing, right? So the building next to us that we purchased, it accomplishes that. But the second thing, it's going to be our headquarters. So we'll be able to bring teams out to our prototype when we're hiring, and they'll stay with us on Maui, and they will get the full Maui prototype training and experience
That's
out of our
awesome.
headquarters. So they'll be prepared as, okay, this is a culture, this is how we do things, this is how we operate, this is the energy that we're trying to promote. They'll go and get that experience, and then they'll launch from their destination.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your goal is to get to 400 beds and hit an annual gross expected revenue of $4 million a year. What is your strategy and timeline
Okay, so
for that?
I want to touch on that. So first of all, the 400 beds is 400 beds in Hawaii, right?
Oh,
So we have
okay.
100. Yep, we have 150 beds right now in Hawaii, and our goal in the beginning was, all right, let's operate with 400 beds in Hawaii. Let's hit each island, and then our ultimate goal is to have 4,000 beds throughout our entire portfolio, which includes, 5 major targeted cities. Now, that number is a lot easier to hit when we look at, okay, we have a San Diego property that we've been in negotiations with, and that ultimately could fit 200 beds, right? And it's an urban center that could support it. And so as you start to look at some of these different areas, if you go and look at the big boys in Europe, if you go and look at Generator that bought Freehand for $400 million, it was 4 properties in US urban centers. You're stacking 400 beds in one property. And so we believe that as we go and expand throughout the US and through the urban centers, that we'll be able to hit that number over the course of the next 7 to 10 years.
That's exciting, man. Yeah, hostels are such a fun space for me, not just because of the amazing experiences that I've had in them, but because they have hospitality revenue without a lot of the hospitality competition, like you were talking about. And also, it seems like the competition is so soft in the space that you're buying assets from people who you can operate it 10 times better than they can. So as you're going through the deal flow,
Yeah.
I imagine, is it like harder to find assets that fit the criteria, and that's where the challenge is, as opposed to the competition of multiple people going for it?
You hit it. Yeah, it is. It is a little bit more unique. Um, what we're finding in a lot of the US locations is that these properties are not owned by hostel operators. So, and it makes sense. It's really, if you think about it, the typical US hostel owner was somebody that traveled and they experienced hostels and they fell in love with that concept and it became a passion of theirs. And they're like, this is what I want to do. And so they are central to their hostel business. That's the majority of the 309 hostels that are spread across the United States. So that person is not very likely to go into San Diego and purchase a $10 million building, right? They might go and find a space that works for them 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and they're like this, and then they may lease that space out. So we are finding that in the higher demand urban centers, a lot of these existing hostels, they're not, the hostel owners don't own the building, they lease it from an owner of the asset.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And your goal is to acquire the asset and then operate it.
Our goal is ultimately, we want to own the assets. Are we open to the leasing model, or are we open to a model where there's potentially lease option to purchase to test a market out and test it first? Absolutely. That is a huge, that's one of the things that we target, from an optimal standpoint. If we can go in with a lease option to purchase, that's the way to go. You get to test the model, and ultimately, worst case scenario, you continue the lease and it's not that profitable. But best case scenario is you've already recognized your potential and you're able to, at the purchase time, have already forced a significant amount of appreciation and equity.
Dude, so I don't know in depth your background, but I love how many notes you've commented on that align with tech. So my background is in tech, and listening to you comment on, the prototype in Hawaii, and then also like, oh, let's prove out the concept in these cities before we commit, almost like an MVP or a minimum viable product that we release
Yeah.
in tech to test the market before we fully develop it. What is your background? Because I hear a lot of these notes of um just like how you're structuring the game. It's a much newer way of playing the game than traditional real estate.
Yeah, well, first of all, my background is really in performance-based leadership. So that's my background. And I was through that background, I recognized that uh, in really building a team, that it's about who, not how. It really is. And so my partnership was one of the best decisions that I've made. So my partnership with Mike, we have very complementary skill sets. So I may have vision, strategic thinking, team building capacity, and all of these things that we've done to get people to produce and become their highest and best self within an organization and within a team. And then Mike is an integrator. And so some of these things that may be more technical or what you would call, prototype, that's straight from Mike. He's like, all right, here's our prototype. He's an integrator. So he thinks about things as if it is a tech world, right? He really, in a lot of what he does. So I will say that where that thought process or background comes from, well, it comes from recognizing that having a partner that has complementary skill sets and having a who in my life that can help me grow in those areas and think differently than I was one of the best decisions I made.
So how did y'all's paths cross, and how did you identify, like, okay, for anybody listening who's like, damn, yeah, I wish I had a partner that balanced me out. How do I think about finding a partner? How do I select a partner? What do you have for people there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there's different partnerships. There's a partnership when someone's getting started, and maybe they're going to purchase their first asset, where it's like, okay, well, this is about how can we utilize resources and create maybe some compressed time a little bit, and just organically we tend to get along, and so I feel comfortable, trustworthy, great character, so I feel comfortable teaming up and getting further faster. And it's tied to one asset. That is very different than building an organization and a partnership where you decide we're going to go build an organization together. That decision came from I had recruited Mike as a salesperson to come out and really think big and execute on our team, and he did, and he crushed it. So I had worked with Mike for over the course of, I think it was over 6 years, we had worked together, and so we knew each other very well. I was the leader, and he executed extremely well the vision. He would follow me around with his phone and record everything I said, and then he'd be listening to it over and over, writing notes. So he would take the concept and then he would go and execute it just like strategically, like get everything all, I could really notice that the areas of detail, auditing, all of these things, he had a strength for, and mine was, all right, let's take, I love the name of, the hunt for incredible, right? So, we got to use this opportunity in sales as an opportunity to go and say, okay, what everybody else believes to be impossible, we want to go and say, you know what? Not only do we believe that it's not impossible, not only do we believe that it is possible, but we want to turn that mindset into it's actually probable. So we started on a yearly basis crushing results. And we did it by this concept of being aligned, thinking bigger than what exists, and destroying the thought of that impossible is something. And so, working together in that environment over that amount of time, I think that Mike also recognized, okay, Nate's leadership and ability to get people to rally around that idea of crushing impossible. I think that he really valued my ability to lead people, get people aligned, and to do things that just everybody else would say is impossible.
That's good. Yeah, looking at successful people in the space, very, very often do you find that the people who are moving the quickest and have the most rapid acceleration are the people who find those partnerships where combined they can do far more together than they could apart. I mean, even like with so the tech company that I built returned $250,000 within its first year of just releasing the prototype, and we realized, dude, the market loves this thing. We literally, it was like the cars moving so fast the wheels are hardly staying on, because we didn't release a product to scale. We just released it to test the market. And that was from a partnership where I was a visionary and my partner was the integrator and absolutely crushed it. Same with the hotel deal, bringing in the integrators. Like Alex he's phenomenal with numbers and structured thinking and modeling. And then Anthony and I are more like moving quickly and seeing what's out there in the space and coming up with the ideas and talking to people and stuff like that. So it's a really, really incredible partnership there.
You were talking about, with the partnership and the what you guys all brought to the table, and there were some differences, but there was also, you guys were doing something together too for the first time, right? So you were so smart about the way you did it. You found an expert operator. You like filled the holes of, well, what do we need here? And then together, you guys were like, all right, well, we can take regionally and we can go out and actually accomplish more you compressed time with each other's relationship. So you found relationships that number one, that just organically you felt good about. You found an expert within the group in which you could say, okay, we can lean on this experience. And then just based on manpower, you guys were able to go out there and take down a massive asset, stabilizing this profitable, unbelievable situation in really relatively a short amount of time. If you really look at, I mean, I know that we say short amount of time, we're like, oh, something took 6 months. And we're like, 6 months? But dude, I mean, in the big picture, like 6 months is just, it's from no experience to like taking down a freaking close to a $10 million asset that's pretty radical. And you guys did a really good job of identifying that. Now, long term, like I said, from a partnership standpoint, then it's like, okay, after you do things together, then it's like, are we going to build an organization together? And that's where I think really having, because now it's a marriage, so
Right.
so now it's not just character, not just a one-off project, but it's like, okay, we're going to go build this thing out. That's where we're having some time behind you in working through and going through really difficult things. Mike and I have gone through a lot of difficult things together, and so I think that there's different levels of partnership as you progress.
Yeah, I love that. So your goal is to hit 400 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our goal is to create a $400 million portfolio. We understand to do that it's not going to be made just of hostels. Hostels have built an unbelievable foundation for us. We've learned a tremendous amount fundamentally about hospitality, but what we've also recognized is that really in today's world, that hospitality experiences is the shift. And so we're really open, and we're in our acquisition phase of not just hostels but also independent boutique hotels, experiential lodging. So we're really excited to take the fundamentals that we've learned and kind of go from not just hostels but all the way into our future vision of developing resorts.
Yeah, I often think about and spend a long time studying the rise of the Mongolian Empire, where basically, love them or hate them, Genghis Khan, they acquired more land mass in 40 years than the Roman Empire did in 400, and their strategies on how they did it were definitely worth studying. And what's interesting about them is they were tribes on the steppe, is what it's called, the Mongolian steppe plain, and they were vicious towards each other. These small tribes, they would loot each other, take each other's property, women, kill each other. It was absolutely savage, savage, savage. And what was interesting about them was they would never merge their tribes. They would only conquer each other, and their tribes were small. They were like 30 to 200 people in each little tribe. And what was different about Genghis Khan was he shifted the playing field to where when he would defeat a tribe, he would welcome them in. And so over time, his tribe grew, and he slowly absorbed all the other tribes to create Mongolia. And what is fascinating to me and what reminds me about your story is that from there, now Genghis Khan had the Mongolian Empire that was comprised of these hardened, ruthless, intense warriors who were warriors at a level that no other nation around could compete with. So once they channeled their focus and they aligned and focused on the surrounding nations, they were able to just sweep them away because they had been so hardened by this internal conflict and built up insane stamina and skill for conquering other nations. And that's what reminds me of your story, where the hostel space is so incredibly difficult to do exceedingly well in, where it's not just providing a clean, safe space that has a cool vibe, which is, I mean, in boutique hotels, that's primarily what you're going for. It is that plus this added complexity of creating an experience, being able to market and translate that experience to other people and create this system that now that you have these systems and this understanding down on what experiences look like, it's almost as if you've become battle hardened on delivering experiences and value at such a high and difficult level that now taking that and applying it to boutique hotels where people in that space are not thinking of experiences on that level. They're thinking of experiences as, oh, is there a cool mural on the wall? What are the amenities? Is it a cool hot tub? Is there a cool water feature? You guys are 10xing that on an experience level and getting to take that and apply it to other asset classes gets me really, really excited to see y'all disrupt the space across the board.
I freaking love that analogy, and I particularly align with our start. When you really look at 2018, November of 18 is when we closed on our first property that was going to get converted as a hostel, and it didn't work out. I mean, COVID came, they changed zoning. I mean, the hardening of what we went through, and then to have the vision and believe so deeply in the vision that we took advantage of the best opportunities during COVID. When you think about the mentality that existed during COVID, to have somebody go to banks and say, hey, here's our business model. We know everything's shut down, but we're gonna go and grow a $400 million company, and we're gonna do it by using shared accommodations. That concept was so far-fetched, and we tell that story now, but that's what we went through, right? And we were able to succeed through and believed in. And I think that that's one of the things that anybody out there, when we're talking about, excellence and extraordinary, is, when you believe, what are you willing to do? As long as you're willing to do and be persistent and have a relationship with your fear of failure, that, look, the biggest thing to counter fear of failure is to go all in. I think that that's what anybody can take from our story. It just really is about that relentlessness and that perseverance, and that does create that warrior hardened, we can face anything together and go and grow this $400 million.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so we're wrapping up on time, but I have to get this question in because I'm sure so many people are asking, what did your 0 to 1 look like in terms of acquiring the first $30 million worth of assets? Like, people are listening and they're like, okay, this is what it looks like to have an established portfolio and to be scaling rapidly. What's the high level overview of that 0 to 1 that people can apply to their own lives?
Well, I believe that it's just that, number one, it's taking that action step, right? It's really literally saying, all right, so Mike and I in the beginning, we just had this thing where, like, okay, we took this apartment uh, purchasing multifamily through Neil Bawa, this little class, this little course, and then it was like, okay, so you can take that course and you can go, I just learned something, but that doesn't mean shit, right? What we continued to say to each other, we just had this thing that we freaking high-fived each other every day, and we said, we're in the game. We're in the game. Oh my, we're in the game. And it didn't matter. We'd make a phone call and we're like, bro, we're in the game. The real estate agent called us back. Like, we're in the game. Oh my gosh, look at this opportunity. We're in the game. And look, we were going to look at purchasing apartment buildings, and a deal that we looked at just went under contract that day. But in the comments, it said previously being run as a hostel. And that moment changed everything. We're like, we asked the real estate agent, what does this mean? But look, if we hadn't taken action, if we would have just been like, okay, well, hey, we're just going through life doing our thing. Yeah, this looks interesting to go and consider purchasing apartment buildings. Let's see what it's about. And then just stopped there, then nothing would have happened. But by saying, creating this mantra of we're in the game on a daily basis, that's the difference maker. And that's what anybody and everybody can do, is just taking that actual action step. There are, and part of it is just ignoring the noise and deciding. And I feel like in today's world, that is a huge component that everybody has to understand. There's so much damn noise out there of, you can do this and you can do that. You're right, you could. But what you need to do is pick one and go.
Right.
You can make money in real estate in a million different ways. It doesn't matter. But what you have to do is you have to pick one and go all in, and you'll make money there.
I love that. Nathan, at the Hunt for Incredible, we believe that questions are the answer. So what question do you feel people need to ask themselves or others to be successful in the space?
What if you don't? I mean, I think that that's just such an important question, is like, okay, what if I don't take this action? What if I don't take this step? What if I don't? Because we're always asking ourselves, okay, well, if I do this, and I might be able to do this, I might be able to get this, if I do this, then, but I think the thing that really moves us forward is, okay, am I okay with status quo? What if I don't? What if I don't shift? What if I don't change? What if I don't go all in? And so that, to me, the answers that reside within that question are the ones that really, what if I don't accomplish this? And then I think about, well, damn, my dream is to create generational wealth for my family so that my kids aren't in the situation that I was in. Man, my dream is to give back to the community that frickin' allowed me to prosper. But if I don't have success, I'm not going to be able to leave that legacy behind. And that's the most important thing to me. So asking that question of what if I don't, I feel is critical.
I love that. That's got to be one of my favorite responses that we've had on the show, because I've found reflecting in life that it's the things that I didn't do that I have more regret from than the things that I do. Like even posting on content, that's the simplest one. Is a lot of people, they know they should be posting content, but they don't post content because they don't want to look dumb. But for me, the bigger question was, what if I don't post and I don't go all in? And I always wonder what would have happened if I had, like, what type of leverage did I miss out on by not posting it? And to me, that was a far more scarier answer than the idea that, what happens if I post and I flop or I'm not able to make it? Nobody's going to remember that you ever posted a month afterwards anyway. So just get it out there. But you are going to remember for the rest of your life that you didn't post and you didn't try that thing. And I mean, maybe it's not posting for you. Maybe it's starting that business that you've always been thinking about. Or maybe it's, going to that place that you've always dreamed of. Like whatever it is, what is the cost and the downside? What is the cost of that regret when you're sitting on your deathbed and you're like, oh man, what if I had gone all in? What would my life look like if I didn't just chill and relax and I wasn't scared of that full send moment?
What if I had joined that mastermind? What if I had put myself in that room with all those people? What if I had spent the money when I was feeling uncomfortable and did that, right? Like, what if I did hire Gideon as a coach? What if those are the things, those really are the moments that it's like, dude, oh my gosh, if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have made that one connection that changed everything, it's, well, damn, take action. Let's go.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Nathan, so you have a podcast, the Hotel Investor Playbook, that I've had the pleasure of being on. So everybody needs to check that out. There's that. And then where else can people find you? What are you promoting?
Yeah, that's really, look, these conversations about how we scale, how we grow, how we break through, getting in industry expertise from others that know so much more than us. That's really what we're doing, is we're putting our focus into the Hotel Investor Playbook, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. And our growth by who we have on and what we're learning is having a huge impact on our journey. So yeah, give us a listen, and we know that you'll gain a tremendous amount of value.
And then you have an Instagram too, right? You and Michael?
Yeah, so you can reach me directly at Nathan_St Cyr. But we also have the Hotel Investor Playbook. So either one on Instagram, you'll find us there.
Awesome. Nate Dogg, thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah.